Poor girl gave a kidney without knowing. Now the city's most dangerous man says she belongs to him. The first thing I noticed wasn't the pain, it was the silence. A sterile, padded kind of quiet that pressed against my eardrums, muffled and thick like cotton soaked in antiseptic. Then the light, too bright, too white, slicing through the haze behind my eyes. I blinked slowly, once, twice, until the room sharpened around me. Stark walls, chrome railings, the faint, persistent beep of a monitor echoing somewhere near my head. I tried to move, but my body felt submerged in molasses, heavy and foreign. My mouth was dry, my throat scratched. My stomach ached like it had been scooped out and stitched back together by trembling hands. I remembered. The form I'd signed, the counselor's rehearsed voice assuring me it was noble, that it would change a life, a child's life. I swallowed hard, the lie clinging to the back of my tongue like ash. "She's awake," a voice whispered from just beyond the curtain. Male, sharp. "We'll transfer the file tomorrow. Make sure the pediatric notes are buried. No one's digging." A second voice, a woman, chimed in, annoyed. She wasn't supposed to wake this early. I shut my eyes and forced my breath steady, heart hammering. My skin prickled beneath the hospital gown. The voices faded down the hall, but something had cracked inside me. Something raw. They'd said pediatric, but then they'd said, bury it. My fingers twitched against the sheet. They lied. I had given a piece of myself away to save someone, some faceless, helpless child, and now I didn't know who or why. My mind spun, weak and slow, like it was dragging itself through sludge, but the instinct to run pulsed alive beneath my skin. Not yet. I needed to watch. Listen. Wait. Pretend. A nurse entered. Blonde, young, her badge tilted sideways. She smiled too widely. "How are we feeling, Kala?" My lips parted. My voice barely escaped. "Groggy. That's normal," she said, adjusting my IV with a practiced flick. "You've done something really selfless. The recipient is doing well. You've made a difference." "Who was it?" I rasped, feigning fogginess. "The little girl?" A pause, barely there. Her smile faltered, then returned, brighter and more brittle. "Rest now. You're in good hands." She left before I could ask again. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, counted the panels, traced the cracks, tried to convince myself that exhaustion was playing tricks on me, that my heart wasn't screaming that something had gone terribly, perfectly, quietly wrong. By the time I was discharged 3 days later, I had already memorized the schedule of every nurse in my ward, mapped 2 emergency exits, and written down, by hand, the badge numbers of every doctor who visited me. I walked out smiling, thanking them all, hugging the administrator like a grateful daughter of the system they'd saved. They didn't know I was watching. No one ever did. I wasn't anyone important, just a 22-year-old orphan with no one to miss me, no one to warn me. I lived in a shoebox apartment 2 floors above a laundromat that smelled like wet dust and detergent, ate canned soup when I could afford it, and shadowed overpaid journalists who forgot my name by lunch. And maybe that's why they chose me. Because I was invisible. But they made one mistake. They let me hear the lie. Back in my apartment, I peeled the bandage from my side, inch by inch, wincing as the adhesive tugged at my skin. The scar was neat, precise, surgical. It should have been comforting, but it felt like a mark. Like I'd been branded by something I didn't understand. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened my laptop with fingers that trembled only slightly. I had no credentials, no contacts, no official clearance, but I had time, hunger, and the ruthless curiosity of someone with nothing to lose. First, I traced the hospital files, found versions of forms that didn't match, discrepancies in timestamps. One name flagged again and again, redacted, protected, immune. Whoever this recipient was, they had money, influence, layers of firewall and legal fog guarding their identity. But I didn't stop. I dug deeper. And then I saw it, buried in the metadata of a corrupt log file, a signature, not typed, scanned, the kind of thing someone thought would vanish in the noise. Knox Bishop. The name landed in my stomach like cold iron. I'd heard it in whispers. A billionaire. A ghost in the tech sector. Some said biotech. Others said darker things. He had no public life. No social presence, but behind closed doors, his name was a shadow that silenced rooms. Why would someone like him need a kidney? Why would he take mine? I sat back, spine pressing into the cracked wall behind me, my breath shallow. My heart wanted to panic. My body begged for rest. But something deeper, something furious and ancient and female, rose in me like flame. If he thought I was too small to notice, too weak to matter, he was right. Until now. My screen glowed blue as I typed his name into a blank document. You took something from me, Mr. Bishop. I think it's time I take something back.
She had no idea who she was playing with. Not really. I watched her on the screen, grainy, black and white, still recovering, fingers twitching against cheap sheets like she already suspected too much. I should have ended it there. One call, a silent visit, a broken neck in a forgotten alley, but something in her didn't align with the others. There was a stillness to her, quiet but calculating, like a match waiting to be struck. She wasn't trembling, she was thinking. That's what intrigued me. That's what made her dangerous. Her name's Calla Quinn, Monroe said, setting a thin file on my desk. No family, foster care dropout, works a dead-end internship at a third-tier publication. Completely invisible. I tapped the edge of the file, eyes never leaving the screen where she sat, hunched over her laptop, the glow illuminating that pale face. She was too pale, healing slowly, the price of a clean cut. My name, I suspected, was already a bruise in her chest. Invisible, I repeated, almost to myself. But not stupid. Monroe hesitated. You want us to pull her in? No. I stood, the leather of my chair sighing behind me. Let her chase it. Let's see how far the little rabbit runs. Because I wanted to see it. The exact moment her courage curdled into fear. The instant she realized how deep the roots went. How many names had already been buried so she could ask one too many questions. Calla Quinn had donated a kidney into a system rigged with gold and blood. And it led straight to me. The irony? I didn't even want it. The surgery was forced. Insurance against a crumbling body they said might betray me. I'd refused, but the board overruled. They found a match. Paid enough to silence God, and when I woke up, heart still black, lungs still drawing breath, the name attached to my new organ was redacted, until now. And now, not the curated, sharp-jawed beauty my world worshipped. No, Calla's face was soft, unpainted, etched with tiredness and truth. There was hunger behind her eyes. Journalistic, yes, but deeper. The hunger of someone who'd never been chosen, never been safe, and that made her dangerous in ways even she didn't understand yet. She thought she was hunting. She thought her questions had power. I almost admired the delusion. She's clever, I murmured, watching her pull data that should have been sealed twice over. And brave. Brave or reckless? Monroe asked. Same thing when it ends in fire. He shifted. You want to warn her? I smiled. Cold. Precise. I want to watch her realize she's already inside the lion's mouth. She moved through the footage like a ghost. Always with headphones, always alone. No calls, no friends. A creature of silence and obsession. She stayed up late, slept badly, ate inconsistently. It was familiar. I knew the signs. It was what grief did to people, or obsession, or both. One night she printed something, an image I couldn't quite make out, and stood staring at it for almost an hour. I leaned closer to the monitor. There, on her wall, my name, handwritten, circled in red. Something twisted in me. Not guilt, never guilt, but the intimacy of being named by someone who bled for you. That was. She didn't know what I'd done to keep her alive after the fact. The silence I'd bought. The bodies I'd burned. I could have let her vanish, just another invisible girl carved open for the rich. But something in her had whispered against the scalpel. I wanted to break her, but I wanted her to know it. Have someone get close, I said finally. Not me. Not yet. I want to feel her panic first. I want her to know what it's like to be seen by something she can't unsee. And after? Monroe asked. After? I turned to the glass, watching the city smear into black and gold beneath. After? I decide whether she lives or dies. My reflection stared back. A man carved from control, wired tight with hunger and habit. Calla Quinn had no idea the kind of monster her kindness had awakened. But she would. I'd make sure she felt every inch of it. From the moment her locks failed, from the breath between footsteps behind her, from the hush before the lights went out. And when she finally looked up, trembling and cornered, I wouldn't offer her mercy. I'd offer her the truth, and she'd either belong to me or disappear forever.
There was something about staring too long at a name that made it lose its weight. Knox Bishop. I whispered it aloud once, just to taste the sound. It was sharp, industrial, like something built to cut rather than be worn. I didn't know him, but his name pulsed beneath my skin now, invasive, like a second heartbeat. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw redacted files and clean surgical incisions, smelled the sterile bite of antiseptic and betrayal. I hadn't meant to fall into obsession, but obsession had a way of seducing you when you thought you were just asking questions. I started with basic research. Public records, business filings, press mentions. There were gaps, vast black voids where there should have been a history. No childhood photos, no college records. The earliest evidence of Knox Bishop's existence began at 26, when he founded a tech conglomerate no one could trace back to its funding. That wasn't normal. That wasn't accidental. It was manufactured. And someone had paid dearly to keep it that way. I wanted to believe this was just about a kidney, just about justice. But with every layer I peeled back, I felt him getting closer. Not just metaphorically, physically. The air in my apartment grew colder, heavier. I started locking my windows, sleeping with a wrench beside the bed. Not because I'd been threatened. No, it was subtler than that. Things moved. Not stolen, not broken, just shifted. Like I was being studied, or hunted. I left a hair across my front door one night. When I came home the next evening, it was gone. My lungs refused to fill properly for hours. And yet, I didn't stop. Because something deep inside me, something ancient and angry, was more afraid of not knowing than it was of dying. I printed everything, drew lines between data points, highlighted inconsistencies in fluorescent yellow until my wall looked like a crime scene. And then I found it, a transfer file, tucked between a set of duplicate patient logs, meant to disappear. It referenced an internal courier, a sealed transfer box, a route from a private surgical suite to a location owned by, there it was again, Bishop Industries. I traced the address. It wasn't a hospital. It was a penthouse. He didn't just receive the organ. He took it home. I sat on my floor, back against the mattress, staring at the document until the lines blurred. Something twisted in my gut, cold and violent. It was more than unethical. It was personal, intimate, violating. Who the hell takes a part of someone's body and brings it home? I didn't know how to process that. I still don't. I packed my bag that night. Laptop, hard drive, flashlight, knife. Not because I thought I could confront him, but because some part of me knew I was getting too close to stop. If he came for me, I wanted to be ready. The streetlight outside my window flickered once, then went dark. I stilled. Every molecule in my body froze. Silence, then a soft, deliberate tap against glass. I turned slowly. My fire escape window, closed, locked, now had a smear of something across the pane, like a fingerprint dragged in fog. I couldn't breathe. I stepped forward, touched the glass with 2 fingers. It was still cold, still real. And I wasn't dreaming. He had been here. He wanted me to know. Somewhere between fear and fury, I whispered, "What do you want from me?" There was no answer, of course, but the air shifted, as if the city itself had inhaled something poisonous and sweet. The next morning, there was a note slid under my door. No envelope, just my name in calligraphic ink. Calla. Inside, a single sentence. "You're asking the wrong questions." No signature, no threat, just a statement. I should have run then. I should have deleted everything, burned the files, disappeared into some nameless bus stop and never looked back. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Because the monster in the tower had just flinched, and I had no idea what that would cost me.
She touched the glass. I saw it. Her fingers, slender and trembling, grazing the window where I'd left the mark. Not enough to break in, just enough to remind her she wasn't alone, that she hadn't been for days. There was something exquisite in her stillness. The moment when fear bloomed, slow and poisonous, before it turned to defiance. She wasn't made for obedience. She was made to challenge, to claw her way through layers of silence until she could scream. And God, I wanted to be the reason she screamed. I watched her read the note. Her lips parted slightly, as if she were about to laugh, but didn't. She didn't crumple the paper. She didn't run. She smiled. It wasn't the smile of a woman breaking. It was the smile of someone who'd caught scent of something she shouldn't have and couldn't resist. That smile ignited something ancient in. She didn't know what kind of game she'd stepped into, but she was playing now, and I didn't want her to stop. Monroe was pacing when I arrived back at the compound. "She's unstable," he said, tossing a new set of photos onto the table. "Reckless. You need to shut her down." I stared at the images. Calla, hunched in front of her laptop, headphones tangled in her hair, coffee stains on her desk, maps taped to the wall like blood splat. She looked obsessed, consumed, beautiful. "She's not unstable. She's waking up." "You think this is romantic?" he snapped. "You're letting her get too close. We've handled women like her before. Give me the word." "No." "Why not?" "Because she's mine." I didn't say it aloud. I didn't need to. I could feel it in the weight of my chest, in the way her name sat just beneath my skin like a bruise I pressed for the pleasure of. Calla Quinn had become a rhythm inside me, one I didn't understand, one I wasn't ready to silence. "Send a message," I said. "Something louder this time." "Loud how?" "Make her think she's safe, then remind her she's not." It wasn't about fear. Not entirely. It was about pressure, precision, the right amount of tension to see if she would snap or shine. That night, I had the locks on her door changed while she slept. Nothing taken, nothing broken, just different. I wanted her to feel the shift the moment her fingers reached for the key that no longer fit. The next morning she stood in the hallway for 6 full minutes, still as a statue. Then she stepped back, didn't panic, didn't scream. She ran her fingers along the frame like she was memorizing it, like it had become a message in itself. And then she laughed. Not loud, not unhinged, soft, warm, wicked, like she'd just realized I wanted her scared. My chest tightened. I was starting to lose control. I couldn't stop watching, couldn't stop thinking, couldn't stop remembering the way she looked in that hospital bed, pale and unconscious, a line of blood blooming beneath the bandages like a ribbon marking her sacrifice. She hadn't meant to save me. She hadn't even known, but her body had been carved open, and now I was inside her, breathing because of her. I hated it. I wanted more. That night, I stood across the street from just outside the reach of light, watching her. She wore a threadbare sweater, too large, sliding off one shoulder. Her skin glowed like candle wax, soft and unguarded. She rubbed her neck as if someone had whispered there, and I wondered, did she feel me? A breeze tugged her curtain open. She looked up. Our eyes didn't meet, but something in her stilled. Her head tilted slightly, her lips parted, and for a second, I thought she would call out. Instead, she whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she closed the curtain. She knew. She knew I was watching. And she wasn't afraid. She was waiting.
The door didn't open. My key twisted uselessly, the lock unyielding. Slick, silent, new. I stood there, spine pressed to peeling wallpaper, pulse a slow drum beneath my skin. Someone had been here again. Not a thief, not a vandal. Someone with purpose, with precision. They wanted me to feel it, not just know it. That was the part that curled around my ribs like a fist. He wanted me to understand that I was never alone, that he could reach me at any time, that my body, my space, my breath, none of it belonged to me anymore. I should have been afraid. I was, but it wasn't clean fear. It was layered, hot and cold, tinged with something I hated myself for recognizing. Intrigue, recognition, hunger, the kind that settled low and deep where no one could see. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it, except for the mirror. It had been moved, angled just slightly toward the bed, as if someone had stood there watching me sleep, or memorizing me, or worse, protecting me. I touched the glass, my fingertip leaving a crescent in the fog. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, voice soft enough to disappear into my own breath. "What do you want?" He didn't answer, but I felt him, in the air, in the silence, in the place where his name lived now, just behind my sternum, like a brand I couldn't scrape off. Knox Bishop. I said it aloud, just to hear how it sounded in my mouth, like sin, like metal, like a promise no one should ever make. I sat on the edge of the bed, knees curled, laptop glowing in the dark. The map on my screen pulsed with dots and lines, red threads connecting offshore accounts, shell corporations, real estate cloaked in trusts. Everything traced back to him, even when it didn't. I stared until my eyes burned. And then I heard it. A click. The faintest brush of a lock. Not the front door. The window. I didn't move. The air shifted. Cooler. Sharper. Like something sacred had just entered the room and I wasn't supposed to breathe it in. "Calla." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It threaded through the dark like velvet pulled over skin. Deep. Cruel. Intimate. It knew me. That terrified me more than anything. "You don't belong here," I said, though my voice lacked weight. "You shouldn't be in my home." He didn't laugh, didn't move, just let the silence stretch, thick with the kind of tension that pulls teeth from the jaw. "This isn't your home," he said finally. "Not anymore." I turned toward the sound, but I couldn't see him. Only shadow, only the scent of something sharp. Cologne, sweat, danger. "What do you want?" I asked again, this time with a thread of steel beneath the tremor. He stepped forward, just enough for the light to catch the edge of his jaw. His eyes were unreadable, but I could feel them carving into me, layer by layer. "I want what's already mine." The words dropped like a match into oil. Every cell in me lit up, protesting, trembling, aching. "I didn't give you permission. You gave me your body," he said, low and steady. "You gave me breath, life. That's more than permission, Calla. That's a bond." My mouth dried. I hated how those words made me feel. Possessed, seen, claimed. I hated the part of me that didn't want to scream. "You think because someone bled for you, you own them?" He stepped closer, slowly, like a lion circling prey that had forgotten how to run. "No," he murmured. "I think because someone bled for me, I owe them everything, even if they hate me for how I repay it." "And how is that?" I whispered, eyes locked to his. He smiled then, barely, with devotion, with obsession, with absolute, unrelenting attention. My heart was a war drum. You're insane. I'm alive because of you. That makes me yours, whether you want me or not. He stood still, gaze burning through me. I should have run, should have screamed, but I didn't. I couldn't. Because part of me, some small traitorous part, was starting to wonder what it might feel like to be his.
She stood there, shaking, but not from fear. It was fury, heat rising in waves from her skin like static, wild and defiant. I had seen countless men beg for air with my hand around their throats, and not one of them looked at me the way she did now, with defiance wrapped in trembling curiosity, with resistance that begged to be broken just so it could learn how to rise again. I should have left. Should have walked back into the dark and let her believe I was only a myth woven in her paranoia. But I couldn't. She had summoned me with her obsession, called me into her orbit with questions and sharp glances and the quiet challenge in her breath, and I had come. "You're not afraid," I said, my voice low, level, deadly quiet. "I am," she whispered, chin lifted, eyes burning. "I'm just not yours to scare." The laugh that broke from me was soft, not amusement, something darker, admiration or desire edged with disdain. She didn't know what she'd just provoked. I stepped toward her. She didn't move, just watched me like a match daring the flame. "You think this is a game, Kala?" I murmured, reaching out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, my fingers grazing the pulse in her throat. It jumped beneath my touch, and her breath caught, just enough for me to feel it. "You've trespassed, dug too deep. You knew there'd be consequences." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't pull away. "I was looking for truth." "No," I said, thumb tracing the edge of her jaw. "You were looking for me." She froze. I let the silence bleed between us, thick, aching, laced with a tension so sharp it vibrated between our ribs. Then I took her wrist, gently, deliberately, and lifted it between us. Her pulse raced against my wild, beautiful. Mine matched it. "You think you can expose me," I said softly. "You think your notes and questions matter. But you've already lost, Kala. The moment you gave me a piece of your body, you gave me leverage over all the rest." She swallowed, her throat working hard. "I didn't choose you. I know." I leaned in, breath against her ear. "But now that I've seen you, I'm not giving you back." The words settled over her like chains, hot, invisible, absolute. Her spine stiffened, but her lips parted, like she was about to protest, or ask me to say it again. I didn't wait for either. I pulled her forward, slow and brutal, until our bodies touched. Not fully, just enough. Enough to remind her she was soft and breakable, and mine. "You broke into my home," she said, but her voice cracked and "I did. You manipulated the system, the surgery, everything. Yes. You're not even pretending to be decent." "No." A beat of silence. Then her voice, low, serrated. "So what now?" I let the question hang in the air like perfume. Then I tilted her chin up, met her gaze with mine, and whispered, "Now I make you disappear." Her breath hitched, the fight in her eyes clashing with something darker, something molten and reluctant and dangerous. She wanted to hate, she did, but hate, when fed by obsession, begins to taste like hunger, and she was starving. I stepped back, releasing her wrist. The absence of contact, a sharper violence than any touch. "You have 1 hour to pack." She blinked. "What?" "You're coming with me." "To where?" "Where I can see you, control you, keep you from destroying both of us." "I'm not going anywhere with you," she snapped. I smiled. "You think this is a choice?" And then I leaned close, just enough to feel the shape of her next breath, and murmured, "You gave me your body. Now I'll take the rest."
He didn't touch me when I packed. He didn't need to. His presence was a pressure behind me, silent, inhaling every flick of my gaze, every breath I took that wasn't yet shaped by him. I moved around the room like a ghost in my own skin, folding clothes with fingers that shook no more than they needed to. 1 hour. That was the time he'd given me. 1 hour to erase my life, to surrender everything I had built from scraps and sweat and solitude. It was too fast, and yet not fast enough. Because with every second, I felt the world tilting, unmaking itself around his gravity. I didn't ask questions. He wouldn't have answered. I didn't scream. He wouldn't have flinched. I didn't beg. He would have enjoyed it. Instead, I stood in front of the mirror for a moment too long, staring at a version of myself that no longer existed. My reflection looked back, pale, wide-eyed, lips parted like a girl who had just been claimed, but hadn't decided if she'd fight or kneel. My throat tightened. I hated that he'd rewritten my edges. I hated more that I didn't want to undo it. His voice came from behind me, calm, final. "Time's up." I turned slowly. He was leaning in the doorway like he'd been there for hours, watching, reading, cataloging every detail. The suit he wore was too precise, tailored within an inch of cruelty. His eyes didn't waver, They pinned me in place as if he'd already imagined how I'd look beneath him, gasping, undone, and that thought had pleased him. "You don't have to do this," I said softly, not because I believed it, but because I needed to hear the lie one last time. His mouth curved, no smile, just a shadow of satisfaction. "You already said yes, the second you opened your door. I opened it because you were already inside." He pushed off the doorframe and crossed the room in a single measured breath. When he stopped in front of me, he didn't reach for my body. He reached for my bag, took it from my shoulder, slung it over his with a kind of galling ease that made me want to claw at him and kiss him all at once. "Let's go," he said, his voice silk and ash. I followed him because I had no better plan, because he'd already unraveled my safety and I didn't know where to rebuild it. Outside, a black car waited, quiet, gleaming, expensive in a way that didn't try to be. He opened the door. I hesitated, just long enough to feel the sting of my own hesitation. Then I stepped in. The ride was silent. He didn't speak, and I didn't ask where we were going. The city blurred past in shades of steel and regret. My hands rested in my lap like I didn't want them anymore. I could feel his gaze without turning, heavy, curious, possessive. Every nerve in me lit up under it. When we stopped, I expected a mansion, a fortress, a place that screamed wealth and danger. But what I saw was colder, more precise. A glass tower, black as obsidian, rising into a cloud-choked sky. It wasn't beautiful, it was brutal. He led me inside without a word. The elevator swallowed us in silence, climbing floor after floor until the numbers stopped mattering. When the doors opened, I stepped into a space that didn't breathe. It commanded. Slate and marble, steel and fire, windows like wounds in the sky. It wasn't a home, it was a warning. "Take off your coat," he said, his tone infuriatingly casual. I turned. "Is that how this works now? You give orders and I obey?" He stepped closer. "No, you obey, because you want to know what happens if you don't." My coat slid off my shoulders, slow, deliberate. I didn't hand it to him. I let it fall. A small rebellion. A dare. His eyes darkened just slightly. "Good," he murmured. "Keep that fire. I'm not interested in breaking something already broken." I swallowed. "Then what do you want?" He moved like water and steel, circling me. Every step a threat veiled in elegance. "I want to watch you burn." And still, some terrible part of me whispered, "Then strike the match."
She thinks I want to break her, that I brought her here to dismantle her piece by trembling piece, until all that's left is obedience. She's wrong. I don't want her shattered. I want her aware, of me, of herself, of the exact line between surrender and defiance and the moment she chooses to cross it. I don't crave her silence. I crave the sound she makes just before it turns to a gasp. She stands in the center of my space like she doesn't belong there, which is why she does. Every edge of her is wrong in the most perfect way. Too soft for this glass and stone cathedral. Too real. She doesn't fold into the decor. She disrupts it. Becomes the contrast that makes everything else feel dead by comparison. Her coat lies on the floor like an accusation I don't bother answering. I step closer, slowly, giving her time to move. She doesn't. Her breath is quick, shallow, caught somewhere between fight and fascination. Good. That's where the power lives. Not in control. In the tension between choice and compulsion. "You're quiet," I murmur, voice low enough to sink into her skin. "Regretting already?" "I'm calculating," she says, chin lifting, trying to decide what kind of man brings a woman here like this. I smile, just slightly, the kind who doesn't pretend to be a good one. She flinches, but not backward, forward. She hates how direct I am, but she hates lies more. That's what makes her dangerous. And irresistible. "I won't scream," she says. "You should," I reply, stepping behind her, letting silence press between us like breath against bare skin. It would make this easier. Her spine straightens. Her pulse, visible now in the soft hollow of her throat, beats faster. "Are you going to touch me?" she asks, not turning. I let that linger. Then I lean in, just enough for my breath to kiss her nape. "Not yet," she exhales. Not relief, something rawer, frustration, anticipation. "But you want to," she says, and it's not a question. "I want 1,000 things," I whisper. "Only some of them are cruel. Which am I?" I reach out. My fingers hover just above her arm, close enough for her to feel the heat, but never closing the distance. "You," I say, "are necessary." She turns, slowly, the movement liquid with defiance. Her eyes search mine, not for kindness, not for mercy, but for truth. I give it to her. "You're here because I don't trust myself not to let you go." "And keeping me here fixes that?" she asks, voice trembling with something she won't name. "It gives me time." "To do what?" "To decide whether I need to ruin you, or worship you." She blinks, Her breath catches, and in that single instant I see it. Cracks in the armor she wore like skin. She's not afraid of what I'll do. She's afraid of what she'll want. "I'm not your prisoner," she says. "No," I reply. "You're my consequence." She steps back, 1 inch. I let her. Space isn't surrender, it's strategy, and she's playing now, even if she doesn't realize. I walk past her, slowly, deliberately, and pour 2 fingers of bourbon into a crystal glass. I hold it out without looking. She takes it. Her fingers brush mine. The touch is brief, but it's enough. The air thickens, the silence shifts, and I know this is how it begins.
I didn't drink the bourbon. I held it, fingers curled around the glass like it was the only thing keeping me anchored. The liquid inside caught the light, deep and amber, reflecting a version of myself I didn't recognize. Someone still, contained, on the edge of unraveling. He hadn't touched me, not truly, but everything in me pulsed like he had, like his words had sunk beneath my skin and rewired the way my breath moved through my lungs. He stood across the room now, leaning against the marble counter like he owned gravity, watching me with that quiet hunger that didn't beg, it warned. There was nothing performative about him, no seduction by design, just a man who looked at me like he already knew the sound I'd make when I shattered, and worse, like he was patient enough to wait for it. I should have thrown the drink in his face. I should have demanded answers, screamed, fought, anything that would remind both of us I hadn't been carved into belonging, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "What do you see when you look at me?" His head tilted, not mockingly, curious, like he hadn't expected the question. Then he pushed off the counter, moved toward me with unhurried grace, like a storm walking upright. "I see a girl who thought she could navigate a world designed to erase her," he said, "who dug too deep and found the devil sleeping at the bottom. And you're the devil?" His smile was quiet. "No, the devil owes me favors." I almost laughed. I didn't. "Why me?" I asked, voice softer now. "You could have had 100 others, easier ones, willing." He stopped in front of me, close, but not touching, never touching, just hovering on the cusp of it, like he knew the torture of restraint. "Because you didn't know," he said. "You gave without expectation, without leverage, without agenda. That kind of purity is rare and dangerous. Dangerous to who? To people like me." My throat tightened. I didn't want to feel anything for him. Not pity, not fascination, definitely not the slow, traitorous bloom of heat curling behind my ribs. But he said things in that voice, low, deliberate, almost reverent, that made it impossible to stay numb. "You think you own me," I whispered, gaze fixed on the center of his chest, too afraid to meet his eyes, "because of what I gave." "No," he said. "I think I belong to you, and I don't know how to live with that." I looked up, and the world shifted. There was no cruelty in his eyes then, no mask of power, just raw, dark grief, and something that looked almost like fear. Not of me, but of what I'd become to him, the thing he couldn't control. "You kept me here," I said, "locked in your tower. For what?" He reached out slowly and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers were warm, careful, devastating. "To keep the world from ruining you," he said. "To keep myself from doing it first." I didn't breathe. I couldn't, because now I saw it. The crack in him, the fracture running so deep it pulsed through his bones. He hadn't built this place to imprison me. He'd built it to stop himself, and maybe that was worse. I took a step back, glass still clutched in my hand, heart screaming against my ribs. "You can't protect me from yourself," I said. "I know." "Then what are we doing?" He looked at me like I was the last fire left in a burning world. "We're waiting to see who burns first."
She looked at me like I was the weapon she wasn't sure she wanted to disarm. There was something unholy about the way her body held its tension, not in fear, but in the breathless stillness that came just before surrender, or war. I'd seen soldiers freeze like that, not cowards, not weak, just calculating whether the next step would be survival or suicide. And Kala was doing the same with me. I knew it, and I didn't stop her. I let her choose. Because the truth I wouldn't say aloud was this. She'd already taken the sharpest piece of me, and I didn't even notice until she'd made it. She said I couldn't protect her from myself. She was right, but that didn't mean I wouldn't try. I stepped closer. Not fast, not aggressive, just inevitable. The way a shadow falls when the sun forgets itself. Her lips parted, her breath shallow, eyes catching the dim light like glass full of storm. I didn't reach for her yet. I let the air between us tighten, let it ache, let it beg. "Say it again," I murmured. Her brows pulled tight. "Say what?" "That I can't protect you." She didn't speak. She didn't need to. I leaned in, just enough. My voice dropped, a blade beneath silk. "Because if I can't protect you, Kala, I'll destroy everything that tries." She inhaled, sharp, uneven, but she didn't pull away. She stood there, trembling from the inside out, and whispered the one thing that should have broken me. Maybe I don't want to be protected. And that, God, that, undid something brutal in me. I reached for her, not roughly, not with the cold calculation I'd mastered, but with something hungry and honest and dangerously close to reverence. My hand slid behind, fingers threading through her hair, anchoring her to me like the world might tilt and throw us both. Her eyes widened. She didn't blink. I didn't breathe, and I kissed her. It wasn't soft. It wasn't cruel. It was the collision of two storms that had circled too long in silence. Her mouth opened beneath mine on a gasp, and I devoured it like a man who'd been starving on purpose. Her hands gripped my shirt, tight, desperate, caught between pulling me closer and pushing me away. She didn't do either. She just held on, and so did I. The kiss deepened, darkened, twisted into something sharp-edged and raw. There was no gentleness in it, no safety, only truth, torn open between teeth and breath, and the fragile, trembling question of who would break first. I pulled back just enough to speak, my lips brushing hers. "Do you hate me?" Her breath hitched. Her eyes fluttered open, hazy, conflicted, furious. "I think I should, but you don't." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I kissed her again, slower this time, not less intense, just deeper. Like I wanted to memorize the shape of regret before it came. Her body arched into mine, and I caught her around the waist, held her like she was the only thing tethering me to what was left of my soul. She made a sound then, soft, broken, beautiful, and I knew. She was already burning.
He kissed me like it was a confession, like he was offering a part of himself he couldn't afford to lose, and I was taking it with every breath. It should have felt wrong, being held like that by the man who had unraveled my life thread by thread, but nothing about it was wrong. It was fire and oxygen, colliding at the exact point where logic dissolved. My hands clenched the fabric of his shirt like I could anchor myself there, like if I let go, I'd fall straight through the marble beneath our feet. His mouth was warm, demanding, but not cruel, not now. It was almost worse. How reverent it had become, how his fingers didn't bruise but lingered, like he didn't trust himself to touch me without worshipping what he found. And for one fractured heartbeat, I let myself believe he meant it, that this wasn't control, that this wasn't war. But then, I remembered. I pulled away with a gasp, stumbling back a step, my fingers still trembling from the imprint of him. His expression didn't change. He didn't demand I return. He just watched me like he already knew what I'd seen. "What are you hiding?" I asked, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. His jaw tensed, but he didn't look away. "I've given you more honesty than anyone," he said. "That's not the same as giving me the truth." He studied me, and I felt it again, that weight in the air when he decided something final. "Come with me." I didn't move. "I'm not asking," he added, quieter. I followed. He led me through the hallway, past doors I hadn't been allowed to touch, until we reached one at the end, steel, unmarked. He scanned his fingerprint, then his eye. The lock clicked. The door opened. The room was colder, not in temperature, in intention. Screens lined the walls, each flickering with data I couldn't decipher. Maps, names, medical codes, images, patients, procedures, things that should have been under lock and key in some government facility. And in the center, a single folder. Physical. Real. He picked it up and handed it to me. I opened it with hands that already knew they'd regret it. There I was. My name, my donor ID, my blood work, logged and time-stamped. Cross-referenced, not with a child, not with a woman in need, but with a VIP recipient listed only as Subject K. "Subject K," I whispered. Knox didn't speak. I turned the page. More records, trials, lab signatures. It wasn't just illegal, it was monstrous. Experimental tech, black market biotech. And my body had been part of it, without my consent, without my knowledge. "Tell me this isn't you," I breathed. He walked to the console, tapped a few commands. The central screen lit up with his file, his name, his history, or what passed for one, and at the bottom, linked in blood and system code, my donation. My heartbeat cracked against my ribs. "You knew," I whispered. "You knew from the start." "I didn't know it was you at first," he said. "They hid your identity. I ordered it. I didn't care who gave the organ, only that it matched. I didn't want to live." My hands curled around the folder like I could crush it. "And when you found out?" "I found out 2 months later, after the recovery, after the pain stopped, after I started dreaming again. That's when I saw your name. And you hunted me down. You took everything." "No," he said. "I gave everything." My laugh was hollow, sharp, You call this giving? I call it surviving, he said. And I call you the only thing I've touched that didn't turn to rot. I wanted to throw the folder at him. I wanted to scream until my throat tore. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because somewhere between the horror and the betrayal, something else was blooming, something I wasn't ready to name. He stepped forward. I didn't plan this, Kala. But now that you know, you have two choices. Stay and understand what you've become a part of, or leave and pretend this never happened. I looked up at him and said the only thing that mattered. You think you're giving me a choice. His voice dropped. I'm giving you a moment.
I watched her fingers grip the folder like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. But it wasn't the documents that were dangerous. It was what she saw between the lines. Not the science. Not the corruption. Me. She saw me for what I was. Not the polished predator in tailored suits. Not the controlled, composed man the world feared. But the thing beneath it all. The one who let her bleed for him, and then followed the scent like a starving animal. I didn't speak. Not right away. Because she wasn't ready. She needed to feel the truth press against her ribs. Needed to taste the betrayal slow and bitter before she decided if it would turn to rage or desire. You orchestrated this, she said at last, quiet but shaking. Every step. You pulled me into your world and made me think I had a choice. I never lied, I answered. Her eyes lifted to mine, cold, clear, devastated. You never needed to. She turned from me like my gaze burned, her silhouette sharp against the cold blue glow of the monitor. For a moment, I saw her not as the girl who had stumbled into my shadow, but as the reckoning I had invited. Beautiful, furious, unforgiving, and I knew I should end it. Cut the thread, walk away, destroy the only thing in my world that could unravel me, but I didn't. I stepped closer. Her breath faltered. She felt me behind her, though I didn't touch. Not yet. I let the silence hum between us, dark and electric. I read your article, I said. She went still. The draft you started, the one hidden in that encrypted file on your drive. Clever, but not clever. And she turned, slowly. Her mouth parted, but no words came. Just a flicker of guilt, or pride. I couldn't tell which. I wasn't going to publish it, she whispered. No, I said. You were going to bury it, and then you were going to bury yourself with it. Her lips trembled. You think this is guilt? No, I said. I think it's grief. She didn't deny it. I should expose you, she said. I should make you answer for every name on those files. I stepped closer, close enough to feel her heat, close enough to smell her defiance. Then do it. She blinked. Ruin me, Kala. Set the fire. Burn the whole thing down. Why aren't you stopping me? Because I want to know if your justice is louder than what I make you feel. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It throbbed. She shook her head. You're the worst kind of monster. I never said I wasn't. Then why let me see this? I leaned in, my mouth close to her ear. Because if I'm going to lose, I want it to be to you. Her breath caught. Her spine straightened. I hate you. I smiled. Then you're exactly where I want you. She shoved the folder against my chest. Hard. Then keep it. Keep all of it. Just remember, if I ever decide to finish what I started, you'll never see it coming. I let the papers fall between us. Then I whispered, I hope I do.
He didn't chase me when I left the room. He didn't need to. His voice followed me, echoing inside my ribs, staining every breath. Burn the whole thing down. Then do it. And the worst part? The sickest part? I wanted to. I wanted to strike the match and let everything he built crumble under the weight of my fury. But I couldn't. Not because I forgave him. Not because I trusted him. But because part of me still didn't know who I was without the heat of him pressed into my spine. I ended up in a room I hadn't seen before. Floor-to-ceiling windows, cold moonlight slicing through the dark like a blade. I stood there, arms wrapped around my body like they could hold me together, like they could protect me from the truth. Not just his truth, mine. I didn't want him to touch me, but I wanted to remember how it felt when he did. I didn't want to belong to him, but I already did. 3 days, he'd said. 3 days before I had to decide. No chains, no locked doors. Just me, inside this gilded cage, with my fury and my need clawing each other raw. I didn't sleep. Not the first night. I watched the city blink beneath us while the shadows curled through my veins like something sacred. He didn't come. Not once. And that absence screamed louder than any locked door ever could. The second night I wandered. The tower was a monument to his control. Polished edges, precision, everything cold and immaculate, everything calculated, except me. I found a piano on the lower floor, dustless, untouched, still in tune. I sat on the bench, let my fingers rest against the keys. I didn't know how to play, but the silence begged for something human. I pressed one note, then another. It wasn't music, but it was mine. You're not what I expected, came his voice from behind me. I didn't turn. And what did you expect? A victim, a spy, a thief in pretty skin. And now? He moved closer. I felt the gravity shift. Now I'm the one being undone. I looked up, met his gaze in the reflection of the glossy black lid. He was still in the same dark shirt, sleeves rolled, collar open like he hadn't needed armor to begin with. His eyes were quieter now. Not soft, never soft, but less sharpened. Why me? I asked. He stepped beside me, close, but not touching. Because you were never meant to belong in this world, and yet you walked into it without flinching. I flinched. You stayed. I swallowed. And if I stay 3 days longer? He exhaled. A sound that wasn't relief, wasn't control. Something else. Something raw. Then I'll give you what's left of me. I turned, slowly. What's left? He didn't answer with words. He kissed me. Not like the last time. Not with hunger or warning, but with ache, with reverence, with something that tasted like ruin disguised as worship. I kissed him back, because for 3 days I didn't have to be right. I just had to feel.
She kissed me like forgiveness hadn't been invented yet, like she wasn't sure if this was redemption or self-destruction, only that her mouth belonged on mine for as long as the world stayed quiet, and I let her. I let her take control of something I never gave away. Her fingers curled into my shirt, anchoring us in that impossible space where hate softens and heat sharpens. I should have stopped, should have walked away before I handed her the only part of me still untouched by blood and control. But I didn't. I pressed my hands to her waist, not claiming, just holding like a man who knew touch wouldn't save him, but still needed to feel her shape before he burned. She didn't ask questions, not with words. Her mouth asked everything, her breath, her hesitation, the way her body leaned into mine like she was waiting to be ruined again, but this time, gently. It wasn't sex. Not yet. It was surrender wrapped in tension. It was danger wrapped in worship, and I hated it for how much it mattered, because that was the moment I knew I couldn't hurt her again, and that terrified me more than anything ever had. I pulled back, not far, just enough to see her eyes. They were glassy, dark, waiting for something I couldn't get. Not tonight, not like this. My thumb brushed her cheek. She leaned into it like I was something safe, and the irony sliced through me like glass. I shouldn't want this, she whispered. But you do, I said. Her breath hitched. So do you. I nodded. Once. Then why stop? Because if I don't, I'll lose the last piece of me that still remembers how to walk away. But I didn't say that. I said, because I want the part of you that chooses, not the one that confuses desire with surrender. Her eyes narrowed, but not in anger, in recognition. You think I don't know the difference? I think you've been surviving for so long. You've forgotten what it feels like to simply want. She stepped back, just slightly. You think this is simple? No, I said. But I want it to be real. She looked away, arms wrapping around herself like she needed to protect something fragile inside her chest. I hated that I'd made her do that. Hated more that I didn't know how to stop being the reason. She whispered, do you regret it? Taking it? My body, that piece of me. I closed the space between us slowly, gently, until her forehead rested against mine. My voice was a breath. Every day. She exhaled like she'd been holding that question for years. But not because I lived, I added. Because I didn't deserve to be saved by someone like you. Her hands found mine then, tired, small, still trembling. I brought them to my chest. I can't erase what I've done, but I can give you everything I haven't broken yet. She didn't respond with words. She just stood there, letting me hold her, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a weapon.
He held me like I was the only thing left in his hands that didn't bleed. Not tightly, not possessively, but with a gentleness so stark, so out of place in this cold empire of glass and steel, it felt like a contradiction, like a promise he couldn't speak. I should have pulled away, should have stepped back and rebuilt the walls he'd spent days tearing down with every look, every breath, every word he wasn't supposed to know how to say. But I didn't. I stayed. Because somewhere in the marrow of me, something had stopped running. And it wasn't fear. It was need. Slowly I lifted my face, searching his eyes. There was no mask this time. No cruelty dressed in silk. Only exhaustion. Only grief. Only a man who didn't know how to ask to be held. So he held me instead. I don't know what this is, I whispered. Neither do I, he said. But I want it. His hands stilled against my waist. I felt his breath catch, just slightly, like I'd reached somewhere inside him that no one had dared touch. And then he moved. Just barely. Just enough. Pressing his lips to mine like he was terrified it would destroy us both. But it didn't. It steadied me, grounded me, lit me from the inside in a way nothing ever had. This time, I kissed him back with certainty. His hands curved around my back, slow and reverent, pulling me flush against him until there was no room for breath, only heat, only pressure, only want. My fingers slid into his hair, soft and damp from the weight of too many unspoken things. He groaned, low and quiet, like the sound of breaking beneath water, and I drank it in. We moved together without thinking, guided not by logic, but by something older, something hungrier. My back found the edge of the piano, cool against overheated skin, and I gasped into his mouth when his hand swept beneath my thighs and lifted me. I wrapped around him instinctively, a question without language, a plea without pride. He answered it with the way he kissed me, deep, slow, deliberate, like every second was sacred. He didn't rush, he didn't demand, he worshipped. My sweater was gone before I realized I'd let it fall, and his hands, God, his hands, trailed reverently across every inch of skin he uncovered, like he'd earned nothing and still wanted to deserve it. He paused when he reached the scar. His thumb brushed it, breath shuddering, and I felt something break between us. "This is mine," he whispered, "but so are the parts I didn't take." I didn't cry, but I felt it, tight in my throat, aching behind my ribs. I cupped his face in my palms, met his gaze, and gave him the only truth I had left. "Then don't just touch me," I said. "Feel me, all of me, the damage, the fire, the parts that might never forgive you." He kissed me like a vow, and when we sank into each other, bodies tangled, hearts bared, I didn't feel owned. I felt chosen.
She fell asleep in my arms like she belonged there, and I let her, even though I knew I had no right. Her breath was soft against my throat, her leg tangled with mine, her heartbeat slow and warm beneath my palm. The way she trusted me, even for that 1 hour, was unbearable. Not because I didn't want it. God, I wanted it, but because I knew it wouldn't last. I wasn't made to keep things. I was made to take them. And the longer I held her, the more certain I became that the only way to protect her now was to disappear. I left her before the sun rose, quiet, careful. She didn't stir when I pulled away, just sighed and curled into the space where I'd been, and that sound, soft and small and unguarded, ripped something from me I didn't know I could. I stood in the doorway for longer than I should have, memorizing her silhouette against the sheets, the way her hand reached toward me even in sleep. And then I turned away, because if I didn't, I'd stay, and staying meant destroying her slowly. Downstairs, the screens were still glowing. Her file was open, so was mine, tied together by blood and consequence. I stared at the lines, the signatures, the time-stamped deceit that had bound us before we ever touched. I thought about the way she'd looked at me when she first found out, like I'd stolen something she couldn't name yet. I had, and it wasn't her kidney. It was the illusion that she was untouchable. I shut it all down, encrypted everything, wiped the traces. The last thing I did was print the final draft of her article, the one I hadn't told her I'd found. It was brilliant, brutal, honest. The kind of story that would rip open my world and salt the ruin. But she hadn't published it. Not yet. She still could, and I wouldn't stop her. I folded the pages and placed them on her nightstand, beside the glass of water I knew she'd reach for when she woke. I didn't leave a note, just the truth, printed in ink and silence. If she wanted to finish it, she would. If she didn't, it would be because she chose me, not because I asked her to. By the time the elevator reached the bottom floor, I wasn't Knox Bishop anymore, just a man with a ruined soul and a heartbeat that no longer belonged to him. I didn't look back, because if I did, I wouldn't have left.
He was gone before I opened my eyes, not gone like a man who meant to return, gone like a ghost who'd never belonged. The space beside me was cold, the sheets pulled tight as if he'd made the bed himself, and on the nightstand, where his hands had once rested, where his breath had warmed my skin, there was only silence in the shape of a stack of paper. My name, my article, the truth, raw and unedited. The story I had buried because somewhere between exposure and revenge, I had fallen for the man who ruined me. I touched the first page. My fingers trembled. Every word stared back at me like a wound I'd opened with my own mouth, like a blade I'd sharpened just to see if I'd dare press it to his throat. But he hadn't run from it. He'd given it back. Not shredded, not redacted, just placed, a choice. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the weight of his absence settle over me like a second skin. The room smelled like him. Bourbon, danger, midnight heat. I hated how my body still reached for him, how my chest still remembered the rhythm of his breath against my back, how my lips still ached from the last time they said nothing and still meant everything. He was right to leave. That's what I told myself as I read the article one more time, all the way through. It didn't lie. It didn't spare. It painted him exactly as he was, ruthless, calculating, untouchable. But I knew something now that the article didn't. I knew what he looked like when he slept, when he apologized without saying it, when he begged with his hands instead of his words. I should have published it. I didn't. Instead, I burned it. Not out of forgiveness, not because I was weak, but because what we had wasn't meant for the world to dissect. It wasn't clean enough. It wasn't pure. It was brutal and tangled and unfinished, and I needed to find him, not to save him, but to understand the part of myself that still whispered his name in the dark. Days passed, then a week, then 10. No calls, no message, no trail, until a letter arrived, no return address, no signature, just my name, handwritten in the ink he used to stain his sins. Inside, coordinates, a place I didn't recognize. Remote, cold, deliberate. There was no explanation, just one line, scrawled in the corner. If you want to forget me, don't come. I packed that night, not because I forgave him, but because I couldn't.
I never expected her to come. That was the only truth I let myself hold. Because if I believed in her, if I let hope curl into the hollow places she used to fill, I would have undone everything I left behind to save her. I'd chosen exile, chosen solitude, chosen to live like a ghost with blood on his hands and her breath still echoing in his chest. I deserved the silence. I earned the absence. When the knock came, I was already standing at the door. I didn't open it right away. I wanted to memorize that moment, the one between knowing and seeing, between the ache and answer. I pressed my hand to the wood. Her heartbeat was on the other side. I could feel it, fast, unsteady, alive. And then I opened the door. She was standing in the snow, coat undone, wind biting at her cheeks, eyes burning like she'd never once blinked since I left. And for a second, neither of us moved. Not because we didn't want to, but because we didn't know how to be in the same space without unraveling. I stepped aside. She walked in without a word. The cabin was quiet, sparse. Everything I owned now fit in 3 rooms and 1 regret. She looked around, but not like she was judging, like she was counting the places I missed her from. She didn't speak until I did. I thought you wouldn't come. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp, shining. Then why did you send it? I swallowed. Because I needed to know if I still hated you, if you still burned. Silence stretched, thick and slow. Her hands clenched at her sides like she didn't trust them to stay still. I watched every inch of her, memorizing again. The way her lip curved when she was holding back, the way her eyes shimmered when she wasn't sure if she was ready to forgive, the way her body leaned just slightly forward, like she hadn't meant to. I said her name. She blinked once, then stepped toward me, and I broke. I cupped her face, breath shaking, and let my mouth hover just above her. Not kissing, not claiming, just existing in the space that had been empty for too long. I'm not the same man you I whispered. She nodded. Good. I'm still not the man you deserve. She exhaled. You never were. But I'm not here for perfect. I'm here for you. I kissed her then, because nothing else mattered, because redemption doesn't come with a clean slate. It comes with scars. And hers had matched mine from the beginning.
It didn't happen all at once. Healing never does. There was no sunrise moment where the pain vanished or a cinematic kiss that made everything make sense. There was just morning after morning where I woke up next to the man I shouldn't have loved and found that I still did. And night after night where he didn't say sorry, but said stay, in every quiet way that mattered. We didn't go back to the city. We didn't go back to the life we left behind. That life was built on lies and silence and power disguised as purpose. We built something else now, slower, smaller, honest. The cabin was still cold in the mornings. He chopped wood like it was penance. I made coffee like it was a prayer. Some days we didn't speak until noon. Some days we never stopped. There were still sharp edges between us, things that hadn't softened, things that probably never would. But I stopped trying to smooth them out. They were part of us now. The jagged corners we learned to lean into instead of away from. I still had the scar. It pulled when I moved too fast, reminded me where this all began. Some days I touched it and felt pride. Some days I touched it and felt betrayal. But always, I felt. And that was more than I'd had before him. He kept a box near the bed. Inside, he placed the pages of my article, burnt edges and all. He never asked why I destroyed it. I never explained. It wasn't because I forgave him. It wasn't because I didn't want the world to know. It was because the truth, once exposed, would have belonged to everyone. And this was ours. He kissed me like memory, like he knew he didn't deserve the second chance, but was starving for it anyway. He held me like every breath might be the one that cost him everything, and I let him, because I knew what it meant to live without him, and I refused to forget what that felt like. Some nights he still wakes in sweat. I never ask what he sees. I just curl closer, press my lips to his shoulder, and remind him we're not ghosts anymore. We're scars that survived the fire. We're stories with endings we wrote ourselves. One morning, he stood in the doorway, sun in his eyes, jaw tense like he'd spent the whole night arguing with his past. And then he turned to me, barefoot, bare-chested, heartbreak in every line of him, and said, If you ever want to go, I won't stop you. But if there's any part of you that still wants to be mine, don't leave. I walked across the room, took his face in my hands, and said, I already am.
There are moments I replay more than I admit. Not the violent ones. Not the ones where I had the upper hand or the power or the plan. No. The ones that haunt me now are quieter. The sound of her breath when she slept on my chest for the first time without fear. The tremble in her voice when she asked if I regretted taking what wasn't mine. The way she looked at me when I told her the truth, knowing it could break her, and how she stayed anyway. She stayed. And every day since, I've woken up wondering how to be a man worthy of that choice. She thinks I'm still trying to forgive myself. She's wrong. I'm not trying. I'm failing, because I don't deserve her forgiveness. I never will. But I've learned something darker, something truer. When you love someone enough, you stop asking for what you don't deserve, and you start protecting the one thing you can still give: your presence, your promise, your pain, if necessary. I've made peace with being the scar she touches when she forgets why she trusted me, as long as I get to be beside her when she remembers. Some nights, I lie awake and trace the shape of her spine with my fingertips, memorizing a prayer. I don't say anything. She thinks I'm asleep, but I'm not. I'm counting the ways I've ruined her life, and the ways she's quietly, without asking, ruined mine. I was a man made of steel and vengeance and shadow. I was untouchable. Then she touched me. She softened the places I thought were permanent. Not with mercy, but with fire. She made me fall in love with the parts of myself I used to kill to survive. She saw what I buried, dusted off the bones, gave them names like truth, like choice, like home. And now she stands in my kitchen every morning, like it's not built on sins. She hums songs I don't recognize, drinks her coffee too hot, reads poetry she doesn't finish, and when she kisses me, it never feels like routine. It feels like a secret, like I've been given something fragile with instructions to never, ever let. Today she turned to me, barefoot and wild-eyed, hair a mess, voice still soft with sleep, and asked, "What would you have done if I never came?" And I said, "Died slowly." She didn't laugh, she just nodded, kissed the side of my neck and whispered, "Then don't waste what I saved." I won't. So here it is, Kala. Not a vow, not a plea, but the last thing I've never said. Be mine. Not because I deserve you, but because you're the only thing I've never wanted to take, only keep, forever. If you made it this far, thank you, truly. Your presence here is not a number, it's a heartbeat, a breath, a reminder that stories still matter, that connection still moves us. Every time you leave a like, a comment, or share this story, even something as simple as "I'm here," you help this moment reach someone who might need. You tell the world, through a quiet gesture, that beauty still deserves to be heard. If this story touched you, even a little, let it live beyond this screen. Subscribe, if you haven't yet, it's free. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what comes next, and please, share it. With someone who aches for softness. With someone who forgot what love sounds like. In a world so loud, so fractured, maybe one quiet story whispered between souls can make a difference. Thank you, and may you always feel welcome in this space. Always.